In this episode, we take up the role of diet in diabetes management.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again for another episode. I'm back with Dr. Byron Black. Byron, first of all, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I guess this episode is entitled Let Food Be Thy Medicine. In this episode, I wanted to focus a little bit more on food, diet, and those types of things. And why have you suggested that food should be your medicine for the condition of diabetes?
Okay. Two things need to be looked at when it comes to the food. It needs to be food and exercise, not just food alone. But when it comes to the food, a lot of people try to eat a diabetic diet. And in my research, I found that there's no such thing as a diabetic diet. If you look at some of the major organizations, the NIH, the ADA, and those sorts of organizations, you'll find that they want you to eat a healthy diet. That includes fruits and vegetables. They don't want you cutting those out. And that's why I said, let food be thy medicine.
So let's get into the diet, because we probably both dieted over the years. We've certainly been exposed to lots of different diets. My parents dieted in the 60s. They counted calories, lots of different ways to do this. And I would have to say, based on my experience, it's really common sense. Now, there are some foods that will increase your insulin, your glucose, that I think we know we should stay away from. But it is, as you said, a healthy diet. It's portion control. It's variety control, if I can use that. So I was wondering if you am I being way too simplistic, or is it something as basic as that? Or how do you counsel people around the issue of the foods they can or should eat if they have the condition of diabetes?
You were spot on with the portion control, the variety. And there's another one, they want you to eat healthy fats. Yeah, that people get dismayed by that. When I tell them that, they're surprised. But you need to be eating healthy fats because that's an important part of your diet. And then you need to be, instead of piling your plate full, you need to be portioning it. And when you portion it, it doesn't need to be one portion of meat. It needs to be a little portion of meat, some portions of vegetables, and some portions of something else, a starch. And then you need to get a variety of fruits and vegetables into your diet. The best way to do your fruits and vegetables is to eat the color of the rainbow. And when you do that, what you're going to wind up doing is you're going to be getting all the nutrients and the vitamins and the minerals that your body requires. When you get stuck eating a certain type of food, you miss out on all the other foods, and you miss out on all those other good nutrients and vitamins.
Let's go to portion, because I knew a Navy SEAL once, and he said that your portion, particularly meat, should be no bigger than your fist. And that was his general rule. And if you go outside the United States, at least I've found portions tend to be much, much smaller.
Right. Not in Texas.
So could you talk to us a little bit specifically about how do you help someone think about a portion? Is it the fist? Is it a couple of cups? How do you help them think through that? Is a burger too much?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend burgers at all. But yes, when you go to a steakhouse, instead of ordering the 12 ounce, you want to look at ordering the 6 ounce, maybe the 8 ounce. And usually the portion size of vegetables and your starches are usually a pretty good size. But one thing you can do if you really want to control portions, especially if you're going to a place like Olive Garden, where your plate of spaghetti is like 4 or 5 servings, you can have them put most of that in a to-go box before they ever bring it out. And that way your portion is small.
How about vegetables? Now, for me, it's pretty easy with strawberries and blueberries because I can take a cup. But things like a banana or a watermelon or an orange, is there a way to think through portion control with fruits?
Not really, because they're such a healthy item. If you do want to do portion control, you can cut them in half, or you can cut the apple into quarters. But typically, when it comes to the fruits and the vegetables, there's not a big restriction on those because they're very low in calories, but very high in nutrients.
How about vegetables? Can I equate a yellow squash to a green squash to a zucchini to a green bean to a piece of lettuce, or are they really different?
They're very different. They have different minerals and nutrients in them. The best way to do the portion control on those is put some on your plate, eat your plate, and if you want some more, you can get some more. But what I tell people most of the time when I tell them that is check yourself. Are you still hungry? If you're not hungry, then don't eat anymore. People don't know when to stop eating is one of the biggest problems.
How about starches? And I say this because number one, I love starches. Number two, my wife is half Irish, so she double loves starches.
Right?
I grew up in the South where I think rice is a staple and bread. So how do you help someone really think through the starches, the breads, the things that really kick in your glucose?
I tell them everything has a label on it now. A slice, if you look at a loaf of bread, it's going to have the contents of a slice. It's going to have the breakdown for calories, for starches, for sugars, for fats. Whatever's in that bread is going to be on there. And if the label on the bread says one slice is a serving, then if you have 2 pieces of bread, you've had 2 servings. And that's really the same with rice. A lot of things go in the size of cups and half cups. Look at your label on the food, and just if it says half a cup, then try to only eat half a cup.
How about, I've heard the term insulin cascade. Can you explain what that is and how that relates to the food topics we've been discussing today?
Certainly. The insulin cascade basically starts when you eat your meal. When you eat, then your body absorbs or breaks down the food into its components, and your intestines and stomach absorb the glucose in that food, from that food. And then it goes into the bloodstream. And when that happens, your blood sugar goes up. When that happens, then your pancreas will secrete insulin. That flows through your body, and it'll attach to a muscle cell. And when it attaches, it causes a plethora, millions of activities, physiological and biological, inside the muscle cell. And when that happens, I don't know why I'm pointing up for. You're going to cut this out, aren't you? When that happens, as you can see on the screen there, at the top, the insulin attaches to the insulin receptor, and that causes all of the activities or the actions inside the cell to happen. And it winds up over there at the left-hand side of the screen, attaching to that GLUT4 vesicle. And when that GLUT4 vesicle gets activated, it releases that GLUT4 transport protein back up to the cell wall, and that allows the sugar to come into the cell. It's a very highly reactive cascade or action. And so all that has to happen before the sugar can come in. That's called the insulin cascade.
What about lipotoxicity?
Lipotoxicity, that is the storing, it's a condition in the cell that is the storing of a lipid droplet or fat droplet in a non-fat storing area. So as our fat cells get fuller in our body, your body has to find a place to store the fat. And so it will store it in a cell. And when it does that, it is storing it in a non-fat storing area. And then that causes that cell to become ineffective, because that's what blocks the insulin cascade from happening. And that's what leads to insulin resistance.
So is there a way to reverse the insulin toxicity or glucose toxicity, I should say?
Lipotoxicity.
Lipotoxicity. Is
Yes.
there a way to reverse that through not only some of the things we've talked about already, but specifically today, diet?
The diet, you can take in you can do low fat diets, or take in your daily recommended amount of fat. And diet and exercise is the key. Exercise is what is going to reverse the lipotoxicity. When you do your aerobic activity, that is what helps burn that fat droplet and get it out of the cell. And when you do the strength training, that is what improves the effectiveness and the efficiency of the cell. It becomes a higher energy burning cell.
So we're moving towards the end of this episode, but maybe we could summarize what we've talked about today. One is the portion control. Could you say a few summation words about portions?
Portion control, you don't have to eat the entire thing. You can always cut it in half and enjoy the rest of it later. Don't fill your plate up to overflowing, and try to put more than one or two items on your plate. Try to break it down with more fruits, more vegetables, more starches, and a little bit of protein.
Well, that really answered what I was going to ask you next, which is the types of food you should try and have literally with every meal.
You should have a protein, which could be fish, chicken, turkey, beef, pork. You should have vegetables, and you should have a starch. And that's pretty much it.
How about number of times to eat per day? Obviously, we grew up with 3 meals a day, but can you have meals in between or smaller meals and more of them? I hate to use the word snacks because that implies to me chocolate cake, and I don't want to suggest that, but can you have an in-between something, whether it's a nut, it's a fruit, it's a piece of something that's healthy?
Yes. You want to start with breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, because just as the word says, it breaks a fast. When you go to bed at night, you go into a fasting mode, a slow metabolism. And when you eat breakfast in the morning, that turns it back on. So you definitely want to have breakfast. And it doesn't have to be a Denny's or IHOP size breakfast. It can be a piece of bagel or fruit or something like that, just to get the stomach going. I don't recommend drinking your breakfast, because if we were meant to drink our food, we'd have straws instead of teeth. We're meant to eat. Eat your breakfast, eat your lunch, and eat your dinner. And in between, yes, it's very important to have some type of small, for lack of a better word, snack. Piece of fruit, just anything that is considered in the healthy range. Not a Snickers or a bag of potato chips, but fruit, vegetables, almonds, some nuts, anything like that.
Dr. Black, unfortunately, we now are at the end of our time, but before we leave, if our listeners wanted any more information on yourself or any of the topics you've touched on today, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
They can call me at 210-569-4129. They can call me or text me, or they can go to my website.com, or they can send me on my Facebook page.
What's the name of your Facebook page?
Medical Fitness Clinic of Kerrville.
All right. I look forward to continuing this conversation.
All right. Thank you.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Diabetes, the Metabolic Bully. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join us again. If you have enjoyed it, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review wherever great podcasts are listened to. Diabetes, the Metabolic Bully is a production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network.